Hi everyone, this morning we were looking at number 7 in our Reforming Church series, New Testament terms that are used to describe what the church is, and number 7 today was disciples. Disciples was a normal word in first century Jewish culture for a trainee, for a learner, for a pupil, someone who's becoming more like the teacher that they're learning from. And it's interesting, we read a bit from Acts chapter 11, where it says this in verse 26: the disciples were called Christians first at Antioch. They didn't really call themselves Christians in the first place. It was like either an insult or a bit of a nickname for them. The Christ people, the ones following Christ, the Christ ones. They were called Christians first at Antioch. And disciples, though, really was the main term that they used to talk about themselves. They were followers of Jesus, pursuing after him and learning from him. And I would say being a disciple of Jesus is both a position and a process. I've positioned myself. I am a follower of Jesus. But it doesn't stop there, of course. It's a lifelong process of following after him, of learning more from him, becoming more like him. It's a dynamic process. I like the word disciple because it has a dynamic sense to it. The term Christian it's obviously a great term, but it can sound a little bit static. I am a believer. And that's obviously right. But there's something about disciple where we're going somewhere. We're heading somewhere. We're becoming something. It's much more dynamic, I think, in the terms of its original usage. But you might want to say, well, how am I going to grow as a disciple of Jesus? How does this process work of becoming more like him? Well, I would say listen to him and do whatever he tells you. If I were to sum it up, there's a lovely little story in John chapter 2 where Jesus is at a wedding, and John records that his mother has come to him about the situation because the host has run out of wine, which is a terrible situation in that culture to happen. And Jesus is not going to give her an answer at that point, but she obviously goes and speaks to some of the servants, and she says to them this great phrase, which is fantastic advice for any stage of being a Christian, which is this. She says to them, do whatever he tells you. I think that is good advice for what is it to be a disciple. Well, listen to him and do whatever he tells you. But then another question is, well, so how do I hear him? Where do I hear him? If I'm supposed to listen and do what he says, I need to know where to go to hear him. So here's my answer. Do whatever he tells you as you hear him in his word, by his spirit, and through his body. The Bible, first off, the word. Listen to him, hear him in his word. The Bible is clearly Jesus' word to us. If you want to know what Jesus thinks or how to follow him, what it is to be like him, read it. Get to grips with it. Spend some time listening to it, someone explaining it, and so on. There's no substitute for going to the word to hear what Jesus is saying to us. A good diet of hearing him is clearly going to happen in hearing the word, digesting the word. So I hear him in his word. I hear him, secondly, by his spirit. One of the most remarkable things about being a Christian is that we have the Holy Spirit with us. And when Jesus went, he said to his disciples, I'm going to send you another. And very importantly, that word for another can or often means another of exactly the same kind, which is exactly what Jesus meant as he was speaking to his disciples. I'm going to go, which freaked them out a bit, but he said, don't worry, I'm going to send another. It's going to be just like me. So if we want to know how to hear from Jesus, we do so in his word, but we do so by his Spirit, who is with us and speaking to us and guiding us and nudging us and prompting us and giving us all sorts of things and instructions throughout the day as he is with us and in us. Hear him in his word, by his Spirit, and hear him through his body. See, the church is his body, indwelt by his Spirit. So I think it's a reasonable expectation to think, I'm going to hear Jesus through his body. I'm going to be inspired to follow Jesus by being inspired by the example of others for a start. So I'm going to learn to follow Jesus by sort of iron sharpening iron as we rub against each other and help one another. We're going to help each other to follow Jesus. And I'm going to see what Jesus is like and what it's like to become more like him by seeing how he is in other people. Those who love well, those who reach out well, those with lots of compassion, all sorts of qualities. It's not just they're nice people, this is the life of Jesus in them. So I'm going to follow Jesus and learn to become like him by hearing him in his word, by his spirit and through his body, and then do whatever he tells me to do.